Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's going on, Fantasy Champs? Welcome to Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always. Poppin' Rick.
What's up? What's up?
We got some interesting content to get to you today. We are a little bit late on this show. Rick has been providing us with some good TikTok content here, and
yeah, bro,
as well as YouTube content. So we are back. We still had 3 episodes this week. A little bit later, so they'll all come out eventually at some point in the week. But anyway, welcome on into the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Today we're going to talk about our top 3 breakout quarterbacks. We're going to continue the breakout section of our conversation tomorrow. Whenever that may be for you, we are going to be talking about riskiest players that we're drafting. We don't do busts around here anymore. I remember I was very hard on the bust train. I was like, busts. This guy's going to bust real hard. And I don't think anybody really, like...
Oh, clickbait.
Yeah, it's clickbait. I don't think anybody really busts. Like
usually if they underperform, I mean, there are players that do. But a lot of the time it's due to injuries.
Like, when was the last time you saw a player that got drafted in the top 10, played every single game, and just didn't perform at a high level?
It definitely has happened. It's just not as common, you know.
It's just not common. So, riskiest players are a better way of going about it, because I feel like you should be willing to draft any player.
Yeah.
At whatever ADP, warrants their selection. So
I'm trying to think of like the top 10 in our draft last year. I could actually pull it up.
Yeah.
I know like McCaffrey, for example, got injured on my team, of course.
I think I saw a stat that said 6 out of 10 top 10 picks end up hitting, something like that, but then the rest of them are usually injuries.
Right.
Like Dalvin Cook underperformed last year, but he was still like a top 10 running back when he was on the field.
Yeah.
But either way, so we're going to get to that portion of content. We're going to talk about some risky players tomorrow and going into the next episodes the following week. And just give you guys that at their ADP, we're not drafting because of the risk level. But today, we're going to complete the breakout series with our top 3 breakout quarterbacks, and we're also going to talk about some tight ends at the end that we have as breakout players as well. We like to combine these because, generally speaking, there's not a lot of breakout quarterbacks and tight ends on a year-to-year basis. So we like to combine these together. We do have 6 players for you. Some we agree on, some we don't agree on, so it should be interesting. Tight ends more specifically, we have one conjunct unified.
Yeah, one guy that we...
And then there are 2 guys that we both
like.
disagree on. But anyway, did you find the other draft?
From last year?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could give you... So McCaffrey 1, wasn't a bust, he got hurt. Dalvin Cook 2, he underperformed a little bit, but wasn't a bust. I think he was still top 10 running back.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry was great before he got hurt. Alvin Kamara was a little underwhelming, but I think he still was a top 10 running back. Zeke was RB9 last year. He was pick 5. Jonathan Taylor, RB1. Najee Harris, pick 7. He was a top 10 running back. Nick Chubb, I think, was a top 12 running back. He was pick 8. Saquon Barkley at pick 9, got injured. Aaron Jones was a top 10 running back. And then Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill. That was your first 12 picks. So there was no one that was...
It's usually injury, which
you can keep going. Eckler, Diggs, back-to-back, great players. Travis Kelce, underperformed, but was still the tight end 1 or 2. So
something came up on I can't remember which podcast it was, but something came up on another podcast that I was listening to, and they were talking about how, like, you really shouldn't be out on anyone in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, there's a reason those guys are going for the first 2 rounds.
Like, some guys get hyped up there. Like, I'm not at their ADP. I'm not taking Travis Kelce.
Right. But like, let's say Travis Kelce fell to like the 4th round. Like, you would draft him.
Oh, my pants
100%.
would be all the way off on the floor.
Even like third round, I would probably draft him in the third round.
You would do it in the third round. I wouldn't, but anyway. So we're gonna jump into breakout players in a second. Before we do, check out our website, fantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcast platforms, please leave a review and share this podcast with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and like and comment down below any questions you have for us, and give us your number one breakout quarterback and your number one breakout tight end.
Yeah, and follow us on TikTok.
Yeah. I mean, all this content on YouTube gets posted. All the TikTok content gets posted on YouTube.
I mean, most of it.
Go watch both.
Yeah. We got a video that has I think it's up to 23,000 views right now. So we on that grind.
Okay. All right. You ready to jump into our top three quarterbacks, Rick?
Let's do it.
So we'll start off with the quarterbacks. Like I said, tight ends conversation will be really short, but let's jump into the first quarterback that we have on this list. And this one is this is more of I would categorize him in my book as like a sleeper.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
But
he's more of a sleeper.
There is a chance for breakout with this player, and at his ADP, I think it's worth a speculative pick later in the draft, taking him and hoping that this is the case. So,
I have an argument for him.
I was just about to give you the floor, Rick. It is Trevor Lawrence. Take it away.
Trevor Lawrence, yes. I actually was just, not to plug myself, but
whoa,
pause. I was doing something for Fantasy Pros, fantasypros.com.
You know what, bro? Just screw school. You're on a roll.
I know. Honestly, I should just drop out and become a full-time fantasy analyst.
That's what they say.
Anyway, and it was top. I think it was my favorite player at each position who could outperform their ADP. So it had to be guys or favorite sleepers, something like that. You could go check it out. I plugged it on Twitter.
Yeah.
And my quarterback was Trevor Lawrence, because he was like QB 17, QB 18 on the consensus.
Mm-hmm.
And I did this because, for one, he's obviously, everybody knows he's not with Urban Meyer anymore. He's now with Doug Peterson, who in the first preseason game did these crazy things like, off-ball movement. I know that's a basketball term, but, bootlegs, things to, help the quarterback. Yep. Easy throws. The touchdown to Evan Ingram was on a play-action bootleg, rolling to his, I believe it was to his right or to his left, actually. And Evan Ingram was wide open for a little 3-yard pass, and then he ran it in the end zone. So just easier plays. Doug Peterson's going to create an easier offense for Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, you can already see that too, just
absolutely.
in the first preseason game. I mean, they're running vanilla garbage that isn't really that hard. They're not facing hard stuff, and they're not. But just watching it, it's clearly that Sean McVay kind of scheme that they're running. It's an NFL offense, and it looks way better than what Urban Meyer put on the garbage field last year.
And Trevor Lawrence, the prospect and the player that he is, you would expect a massive year 2 jump anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of, he threw 3,600 yards last year in that Urban Meyer offense. He could easily throw 4,500 yards. I think it's possible. There's more talent now on the team. The offensive line is much improved. They brought in Christian Kirk, who I don't think is, the greatest receiver in the world, but he's definitely better than anything they had last year. So you get that. And the big thing with Trevor Lawrence that I noticed, and I remember watching back some of the games last year, he's willing to run a lot, which you know how we feel about running quarterbacks. He had 73 carries for 334 yards last year. He only had 2 rushing touchdowns because of how bad Jacksonville was. But let's say Jacksonville is a decent team this year. Let's say they're average. They win 7 games or something like that. And they just have an okay offense. Obviously, Jacksonville's not going to have a great offense. But let's say they have an okay offense. Trevor Lawrence is going to get 4, 5, 6, maybe not 6, but 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns with close to 400 yards rushing. That's a pretty good floor. And will get him a lot of extra fantasy points for rushing. That'll be more rushing than Rodgers, Stafford, Joe Burrow, even, those guys that are just purely pocket passers. And it's closer to something like Justin Herbert. And even then, I think that would be more than Herbert. I would have to double check. But I'm not saying Trevor Lawrence is a rushing quarterback, but he will have a lot more rushing than people think. So if he can just have a pretty good season passing, a real year 2 jump, plus the rushing that he's going to get, He's going to be well worth his ADP, and he could have a breakout season.
Yeah, I think there's obviously some large concerns surrounding Trevor Lawrence. The fact that he threw 600 pass attempts and then only had 3,600 passing yards. And how many touchdowns did he have? I'm trying to find that. I can't see it in front of me.
12. It was bad. It was bad.
600 pass attempts. You got to have more than that.
He had a really, really bad year last
Urban Meyer, obviously, for half the season sucked. And it really affected Trevor Lawrence. So I don't like that early part of the season. I don't really hold against him. The second half, they slowed it down a little bit. They made it a little bit easier for Trevor Lawrence. They had a game late in the season. I believe they beat the Colts.
Last game of the season. Did you watch that game?
No, I did not watch that game.
I didn't really. I mean, I watched parts of it.
Lawrence
I didn't watch it live.
He looked good in that game.
He looked really good. I want to bring up the stats. He had 223 yards and nothing crazy, but 2 touchdowns and I think 65%.
Offensively,
so it was a good game.
They looked decent against a good Colts defense. But last year he had 50. He was 50 interceptable passes, number 1 in the league.
Yep, that's a
49 danger plays, number 3 in the league.
That's a lot.
Pressured throws, number 2 in the league. That's not a stat you want to lead the league in. So obviously the offensive line blows there. And then this is an interesting stat that I really like to see in the passive productivity tab on Player Profiler, but it's money throws 40, number 4 in the NFL, which means his team just sucked. He had to throw that many money throws. Anyway, so for him there was definitely some very large problems. His completion percentage wasn't great. He had some trouble getting the ball into the end zone, which you would expect from a rookie quarterback. But there was some massive problems, A, with Urban Meyer, and B, with that offensive line. Now, Rick said, I wanted to look it up, PFF has Jacksonville ranked as the number 26th offensive line in football. They did make some improvements to the offensive line. So I think there's a bright future for them, but they're still not a great offensive line. It's still not good. Right. It's still not good for them. So, it's an improvement, and I think it's going to be much better than it was last year, especially with Doug Peterson. Maybe, he brought in a coach that can coach these guys up and make them play better. I don't know if that's a thing, but either way, they are slightly better on the offensive line. You see Jacksonville has the 6th best strength of schedule among quarterbacks.
So that's a good thing.
That's fantastic. And I think, you can say what you want about DJ Chark. I would say that is a very obscene overpay.
For Kirk, you mean?
Kirk, sorry.
Yeah, it's absolutely an overpay.
Did I say DJ Chark?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Christian Kirk.
Yeah.
Extreme overpay.
It is an overpay, but Chark got injured. Didn't he break his ankle in week 2 or his foot, and he didn't play the rest of the season?
Something like that.
It was week 1 or 2, so he essentially didn't play last year. So Trevor Lawrence just had Marvin Jones and then a bunch of practice squad players. What's his name? Treadwell.
Yeah, but Christian Kirk wasn't on the team.
What was his name? No, he was not. Chark was, but he got injured.
Right. So
early on,
they basically just replaced
Kirk.
Chark with Kirk. Yeah.
Right.
So, but either way,
And they added Zay Jones, who is at least a decent wide receiver 3 or 4. He's a good depth player.
I would say their receiving core is not great. So
it's not great, but it's better than what it was last year. The drawback
with Trevor Lawrence, is that there's nothing really here to signify usually, you see a second-year quarterback, whether they had a good rookie year or not. There's usually a big, Kyler Murray, okay rookie season, bring in DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, that helps him a lot because he has, a top-tier wide receiver in the NFL that he can trust and throw to. The Jacksonville Jaguars, and not for a lack of trying, I don't think, they suck. And no one wants to go play in Jacksonville. So Trevor Lawrence just doesn't have that on this team.
He does not.
We can talk about Zay Jones and Christian Kirk and some of the guys that they have, even Evan Ingram if you want to bring him.
Well, so I was going to say, I'm not telling you that these guys are great, But Evan Ingram is probably a better tight end than they had last year. They still have Dan Arnold. So Dan Arnold and Evan Ingram. And then one guy, Travis Etienne, I think is going to be a big help for Trevor Lawrence for those checkdowns and stuff. And he'll make stuff happen after the catch. So I do think Etienne is going to be big. But yeah, I generally do agree with you that they don't have a great.
This is a hard one just because it's like you have so many questions with Trevor Lawrence. But if you watched, you look at the numbers here, 66% completion percentage, like I said, the amount of touchdowns that he threw to the amount of passing attempts that he had, all of this stuff combined, it was gross. It didn't look good. Like, if you just look at the numbers, it's okay. But if you watch the games and you go through, there was times where you were like, okay, what are you doing? And I think it was because he felt like he had to force it. I think Urban Meyer came in and was like, oh, this kid can run it year one.
They treated Trevor Lawrence like he was a 12-year veteran.
And it's like he hadn't seen NFL coverages. Like, these guys have been playing for 8-10 years. And like some of these guys they're veterans. They know what to look for in rookie quarterbacks. And like, it's a completely different beast, and you can't overwhelm players. Some people can handle it, some people can't. Justin Herbert could, but I think that's a byproduct of the amount of talent and the team that was put around him.
Yeah.
Right? So for Trevor Lawrence, he was placed in basically hell and asked to be Peyton Manning. So obviously that doesn't work. Whole point of this saying, obviously there's some concerns and problems with Trevor Lawrence, but if you go watch the film and you see some of these advanced analytics that point out like his money throws leading those in the league, you can tell he has the talent and the ability to do this. Like,
absolutely.
When Johnny Manziel was drafted into the NFL, obviously he wasn't a number 1 overall pick, was he?
No, he was a first rounder though.
He was a first round pick. When he came into the NFL, you could tell within 5 minutes that he sucked. Like, it was like, oh God, this guy is just in over his head. Trevor Lawrence does not look like he's in over his head. He looked like he was in a bad scheme, being asked to do too many things.
Way too much.
And it just didn't work. And I think this new situation here, despite the fact that he doesn't have a fancy new toy to play with or whatever, the quarterback is going to be able to run the plays that he knows how to run. Peterson's going to draw things up for him, and I think Lawrence will have a really good year number 2. Breakout is strong for me,
right?
Just because of all of the other variables. But like I said, there is breakout potential there with Trevor Lawrence, and I think there's 3 fantasy quarterbacks out of the 5 rookies that were drafted last year, right, that have a chance of ascending into a spot where they can be a top 5, top 10 quarterback in fantasy football. And we're going to talk about 2 other guys that are also in that conversation, but one of them is Trevor Lawrence. I'll tell you, no, I won't tell you that because that'll give the rest of our show away. But yeah, so Trevor Lawrence, I think, is worth a speculative ad in the late rounds. When you get to the later rounds, I mean, what are you going to draft? Freaking Brian Robinson of the Washington football team or Washington Commanders?
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's like, get Trevor Lawrence in the 14th, 15th round if you can, and call it a day. Let's move on to the next guy, who is Justin Fields. And I saved the best for last, if you're wondering, or you're getting triggered about the fact that he's not on this list. Just wait.
You can have a guess who's the last guy.
Justin Fields is in a very similar predicament as Trevor Lawrence.
Yep.
I don't think the Bears suck as bad as everyone makes it out to be. Like, Darnell Mooney is a good NFL wide receiver. Not just good.
Very good.
He's very good. And not a lot, like I thought about this, and I wanted to ask you, like, on the show, Rick. We're big Pats fans. Patriots have I would say, deep wide receiver room, but they don't have anybody. They have a lot of 2s and 3s, but they don't have anyone that's, like, number 1, take over the game wide receiver, right? Would you take Darnell Mooney over Devontae Parker, who's just the number 1 wide receiver in New England?
I probably would, yeah.
Yeah, just building an NFL team, not in fantasy football.
I think I would still take Mooney.
Yeah,
I mean,
Or for just this season, if you're an NFL team and you had to choose between Mooney and Devontae Parker.
Parker is good when he's healthy, so it's not like it's
not so far off that.
No, I think I would still take Mooney though, but it is close.
But like, so, in that situation, we're assuming that every other, Darnell Mooney's better than Devontae Parker, I think Darnell Mooney's better than anything the Jacksonville Jaguars have.
Yeah, I
so
agree
I'm
with
like,
that.
and then you also have Cole Komet, who they just drafted, who's a great tight end. You have David
Entering a year
Montgomery in the
3 potential
backfield.
breakout.
And I'm just trying to see where their offensive line is ranked. It's probably not good.
It's not good.
Chicago Bears 31st, which is terrible. Even worse than Jacksonville. But so there's some good things to look at for,
Sure.
the Chicago Bears.
My problem, so the way you play devil advocate kind of with Lawrence, I'm going to do it with Fields. And I was really high in Fields. I still like Fields, but the depth at receiver, dude, is so bad. I'm still hoping they got a couple weeks. Please sign Will Fuller. Please sign Odell. Do something, because after Darnell Mooney, it's horrible. Their wide receiver 2 is Byron Pringle. Their wide receiver 3 is N'Keal Harry. I think who's the guy who had a good preseason game? He had like a one-handed catch.
Velus Jones.
Maybe it might have been. I don't think it was Velus Jones. I don't know, but he's in the mix too. Like, they just have a bunch of like random guys.
Yeah.
Hopefully one of those random guys steps up as a good wide receiver too. But if not, he's going to be in a tough situation for those depth receivers. But Mooney and Cole Komet, I absolutely love those guys. I think those are real studs that they can build around.
So I think for Chicago, there's obviously like, I think I'm more willing to say Justin Fields is a breakout for two main reasons. I think if you look at Trevor Lawrence's Jacksonville Jaguars situation, there is, like, besides Christian Kirk and, some of the, it's kind of a similar wide receiver room, but I would definitely take Darnell Mooney in his ascension to stardom than I would take Christian Kirk at this point. So I like Darnell Mooney better. I like Cole Komet better than Evan Ingram. I like David Montgomery better than James Robinson / Travis Etienne. Not in fantasy football, Travis Etienne breakout. But I think, I guess it's even at the running back position if I had to think about it. But the one thing that I think that there's more weapons for Justin Fields than there are for Trevor Lawrence. And so the situation is like maybe 5%, 10% better in Chicago than it is in Jacksonville for Trevor Lawrence. The other thing is rushing upside. And Justin Fields, when there isn't somebody open, what does he do? He ducks and covers. He runs like Lamar Jackson over here, and he's going to find places on the field. If he starts all 17, 18 games or whatever it is in the regular season, he is going to get, I think, over 500 rushing yards and over 5 rushing touchdowns. To add that to a total,
he wouldn't need to have a great year if he does that.
Yeah, like if he gets 20 touchdowns through the air and like 3,500 yards, I think the rushing would put him into the top 10.
It could.
So I think that's what makes Justin Fields a breakout, just because of his dynamic athleticism. We're obviously going to see Trevor Lawrence run, but he's not a running quarterback. That's not what he does. That's not his thing. He rushes because
not to the level of
what Fields does. So I like Justin Fields for that. I think there's a chance he breaks out. This is definitely a strategy with these two guys where I feel like you have to go like with a Matt Stafford, Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins in like the 10th, 9th, 10th, 11th round, and then flip around later in the draft and take a Justin Fields. It sucks to carry two quarterbacks, but in the long run, it ends up being a little bit more beneficial.
Especially if one of them breaks. Especially if you're in a 12-team league too. Like, it'll be worth it because there's not going to be that much on the waiver wire. It's harder to stream quarterbacks. I will say Fields on pace last season. For his rushing numbers, he was on pace for 110 carries, 706 yards, and just 2 touchdowns. So again, the 2 touchdowns will have to go up, but if it does, he gets like 600 rushing yards. He doesn't need to have a great passing season.
No,
he
really
can have 15 interceptions and 20 touchdowns and still be very good at fantasy.
And like when you talk about a breakout, like we're talking about guys that end up in the top, 10, 7, 8 of fantasy football at the quarterback position. So, there's going to be some obvious guys that, fall into the QB2 conversation if you're in a super flex league. But I think Justin Fields is going to be a top 10 quarterback this year as a breakout just because of those things. It might not look great. Look at Jalen Hurts last year.
Yeah.
Did that look good?
Not really.
If you just turned off the Eagles game and watched your fantasy points, it looked
It
great.
looked great.
Yeah,
right.
Wonderful. So I think that's what you see from Justin Fields. And if Jalen Hurts can do that last year with a rookie wide receiver and the guy they got from KFC, I think Justin Fields with the Browns, or not the Browns, with the Bears can do good things. Let's move on to the next guy, who is, unless you have anything else to say on Fields?
No, we can move on.
Who is Trey Lance. And I feel like this, to me, is the biggest smash and grab that I've ever seen in my life at this point. He has a good strength of schedule. There was nothing really on paper. Some people like to bring out stats from last year, and I'm like, this isn't even
It's kind of hard. He started 2 games, right?
Yeah, I'm like, it doesn't even count, like, the games he played. Not that, like, I don't want to discredit things, but, like, why are we...
Maybe
like,
I'll give you a stat that'll change your
I was listening to
mind.
another podcast, and people brought up, like, some statistics, and I'm like, are we really going to do that, though? Like,
he played
like 2
No,
games.
I think that's fair.
So, but for Trey Lance, he comes in now as the QB1. It's clear they're moving on from Jimmy G. They've said it. Jimmy G has been working off to the side. He comes in, he works out at the gym, he throws a couple balls with the trainers, and then he goes home. And meanwhile, the rest of them are practicing. So Trey Lance is going to be the starting quarterback for the 49ers. We know that now. And I think what we think, like, I don't know if you people have watched any film of Trey Lance when he was in college. Like, any film. You know that Justin Fields is a quarterback that likes to run the football. Trey Lance is a running back that plays quarterback. So he is a guy that I think can rival, if he plays all 17 games, I think he can rival Lamar Jackson when it comes to rushing yards, rushing touchdowns in that category of fantasy football. And I think that in and of itself, to me, is the main reason why you should be all in on this kid. Not just that, but you have Debo, you have George Kittle, you have the running game that is the San Francisco 49ers, you have a top 10 offensive line. Like, that team went to the NFC Championship last year. Like, things are all set up. I don't want to say Patrick Mahomes 2018, but this is what this looks like. Just set up.
That level?
I don't know that he's not throwing 50 touchdowns.
So,
like, that's not happening. But I think there's a chance that he can ascend into the breakout category, be a top 5 quarterback in fantasy football.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think he's going to play, because I just don't think he's that. Even the 49ers have kind of been like, he's not really that type of player yet. So I don't think he gets to that level this year, but I do feel like Trey Lance is a smash, like, top 5 quarterback in fantasy football this year if he plays the full gamut of games. Right.
To put it in perspective a little bit, I paced out I took out week 1. Yep. Doesn't really count. From week 4, he only played 4 games. Week 4, 5, 10, and 16. Or week 4, 5, 11, and 17. Sorry. He only started in 2 of them, but the other 2 he played a decent amount.
Yeah.
Week 10, he barely played at all. He just had 3 carries. So this hurts his numbers. But he was still on pace for 144 carries, which would have led all quarterbacks in the NFL last year. That would have been more than Jalen Hurts. Lamar Jackson had 133 in just 12 games, so he would have had more. But if you were to take out that Week 11 game, I mean, he would have been on pace for like 150-something carries. Yeah. That's a running back. In the game he started against Arizona, he had 16 rushing attempts. And then in the game against Houston that he started at the end of the season, he had 8 rushing attempts.
Wow.
So what is that? Quick math, 12 rushing attempts per game. I know it's only 2 games, so it's kind of impossible to pace out his numbers, but still, like, that's insane. He really could get like 150 rushing attempts this year. And if he does that with like 700, 800 rushing yards and like 7 or 8 touchdowns, Trey Lance could be a below average quarterback and still be top 5 in fantasy.
This is also a conversation surrounding Debo, and why I've kind of been like a little bit down on Debo.
Same thing with me, but not Debo for Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah, that's fair. I feel like there were a lot of plays drawn up for Mitchell, a lot of plays drawn up for Debo, that obviously Jimmy G's not going to run it in for a touchdown.
No.
Trey Lance is going to take touchdowns away from those two
Very
guys,
true.
and I think that's going to bring Debo's ceiling down a little bit. I think he'll be fine.
Debo, I don't know if he gets 14 touchdowns again.
Yeah, he's not.
I don't think he does.
He could. Yeah, I agree. That's altogether.
Maybe he gets like 11
That's
or
all
10,
purpose.
which will still be. Yeah, all purpose 14.
The situation is just perfect for Trey Lance, and
really
I think like whether there's good reports or bad reports coming out of camp, I really don't care. Like he's the guy.
I mean,
by the time
like
week one floats around, they don't have a quarterback to fall back on. They can't bench this kid and go to another guy. You got to ride it. So it's like, it's not like a Jalen Hurts situation. You spent 3 first-round picks on this kid. Like, they're going to ride the train. They're going to ride the hurricane. So you're going to be in it too. And if you survive Jalen Hurts, like I said with Justin Fields, you can survive Trey Lance.
In the preseason game, Trey Lance had like 2 bad throws in a row, and then he threw like a perfect 60-yard pass down the field for a touchdown. And I was like,
be a lot.
That's it. He doesn't need he can have like a 55% completion percentage. It doesn't matter. As long as he has those big plays and he gets touchdowns and he gets rushing, it does not matter. He's going to be fantasy relevant.
All right, so we're a little bit over time on the tight end, so we'll try to go through them relatively quickly. Let's start off with the one that we obviously know is a joint one for me and Rick. It's Cole Komet. Comet is, I don't like to buy into, and I'm trying really hard this year not to buy into these crappy offenses where I don't expect the Bears to have a top 10 offense. I mean, if Fields ends up lighting up the field and, really is a breakout quarterback and ends up in the top 5, then the Bears probably will have a better offense because their quarterback is good. I was thinking about that today, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was on my jog. And I was thinking about fantasy football. And I was like, listen. So Aaron Rodgers is in a situation over there. He's wide receiver 1. Hold up. Is Alan Lazard. That is horrible.
Oh.
That is bad. That is very not good. Robert Tonyan is okay at tight end, right? And the only weapons they have offensively are in the backfield, and they can't play them both at the same time. I mean, they could, but and people are like, Rodgers, top 10 quarterback. So what if Fields takes in a step, right? Or Lance, Fields or Lawrence take a big step.
Right.
What's to say that you can't have a top 10 quarterback for those guys, right?
Yeah.
But Komet is in a situation right now where the offense probably won't be great. If we had to take a guess. Me and Rick were a year early and $1 short on Cole Komet. So but he's a breakout again. The big thing that there's a mean barometer for the tight end position that Rick and I, and we'll talk about it as we go through these couple guys, that we like to use to draft late round guys. Like we do like Irv Smith. He's not on this list for me more specifically because of the wrist injury he sustained. He's going to miss a couple weeks to start the season, so I'm more concerned about investing draft capital in a guy that busted up his wrist, but he's one of these guys that I like and is in a good situation. But Komet, or like our main barometer that we look at, is where are they in the pecking order? When a quarterback drops back, when Patrick Mahomes drops back to throw the football, who's he looking at? But last year it was Tyreek Hill and then it was Travis Kelce. Right now it's probably Travis Kelce. So, Cole Komet's in that same situation where you have a young quarterback. Quarterbacks that are young typically like to target the tight end position, typically like to target the running back position. You're going to see Komet probably be the number 2 target in the Bears offense, which sets him up for huge amount of opportunity. I think this guy is going to be in the vicinity of 140 targets possibly. And if he does that, I really don't give a flying rat's tootie if he scores 2 touchdowns. Like, you get that kind of opportunity, you're probably going to be a top 6, top 7 tight end in fantasy football. So the opportunity is there for Cole Kmet. He's the number 2 target in the offense, and he's a guy that I've targeted in a lot of my leagues. Like, you can get TJ Hawkinson in the 6th or 7th round, possibly, maybe if you're lucky, or you get the same player in the 11th round in Cole Kmet.
Yeah. Again, not to toot my own horn, but I did write about Cole Kmet the other day for Fantasy Pros, and
there you go.
One of the things that I did say is similar to what you were just saying. Like, the opportunity is so there, even though the offense is poor. The Bears have 218 vacated targets, and I don't think Byron Pringle or N'Keal Harry is getting that name, man. To be honest,
you're saying it right now, but it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, those guys will obviously, there's going to be targets spread out, but a lot of that will still be available for both Mooney and Cole Kmet. Mm-hmm. And Cole Kmet had 93 targets last year, which was tied for 8th in the NFL for tight ends. So you could be looking at a season where Cole Kmet gets 110, 115, even 120 targets, which if you're a tight end getting that many targets, like, you're probably going to be a top 7 or 8 tight end in the league. It's hard not to be.
Right.
The only reason he was not great last year was because he had 0 touchdowns, but he still had a lot of receptions. It was pretty efficient with what he did. It was just the 0 touchdowns, which, again, won't happen. No matter how bad the Bears are this year, he's not getting 0 touchdowns again. They could be the worst offense in the NFL. He's not getting 0 touchdowns.
Right.
I think he's probably going to get like 7-ish.
Big red zone vibes.
Big red zone vibes for sure. Tight end, obviously. So if he does that, he's a clear tight end. I'm drafting him in every league. Pretty much every league I can.
Yeah, I agree. All right, second guy. Rick, take the floor away. He says Dawson Knox. I say Dawson not.
Okay. Dawson Knox, baby. Everybody's on the Gabe Davis train. Can you tell me why everybody is on the Gabe Davis train?
I don't know, but they won't be after week 2.
That's fair.
What happened to Gabe Davis?
I think it's probably because he's like the number 2 receiver now.
You freaking tell me, dude.
Again, 199 vacated targets. And I don't think Gabe Davis is going to get all those because Gabe Davis had, like, I think 60 targets last year, something like that, in that range.
Holy frick. You say 193?
199.
Who left?
That's a lot. Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley. And then probably someone else. So Isaiah McKenzie is expected to see a slight increase. Jameson Crowder, sure. And then Gabe Davis maybe a little bit. That still leaves like 30, 40 targets up for grabs. I think Dawson Knox gets that. And the only knock, not to make a pun here, but the only knock on Knox is that he kind of had a low target or a low amount of targets. I would say 71 targets, which was a lot lower than Cole Kmet. But he was he had 9 touchdowns. And some people will say that's going to go way down. I don't know if it is because Josh Allen is his quarterback. And if Josh Allen's going to throw 35 plus touchdowns every year, Dawson Knox is the main guy they look to in the red zone. So I'm not sure if that really goes down. So if that can just stay at 9 or around 9, let's say it goes to 8 or 7, but his targets go up to like 90 to 100, he's going to be great because the efficiency will be there with Josh Allen. He's going to still get a decent amount of touchdowns. And then you add the targets in. I think he was tight end 11 last year, and he missed 2 games. So I would expect, again, tight end 7 or 8 this year for Dawson Knox.
2 areas for me that I have a little bit of trouble with Dawson Knox. One is he had 9 touchdowns last year. I feel like that is going to be a large... I mean, you don't know because the touchdowns that Stefon Diggs had a large amount of regression with last year.
Yeah.
I think Dawson Knox took over. So the question is,
a little bit
this year, who is going to get those? Who's going to get that? Because I don't think Dawson Knox is scoring 9 touchdowns again. I think he could get to 6. I think he could get to 5 or 6, but I don't think he's going to score 9. He only had those 49 targets. With all the vacated targets, I definitely think his target share will increase. So if he hits like 100 targets, I think what he lost in production at touchdown will probably be made up for the receptions and the yardage that he gains. The question is, do the Bills look at him as somebody that they want to target? Like, Patrick Mahomes looks at Travis Kelce, or Derek Carr looked at Darren Waller, right? Those kind of guys, or Lamar Jackson looks at Mark Andrews. Is that what Josh Allen sees Dawson Knox being?
Not
because
to that
if
level.
that is the case, then he's going to get a big target share. And if Gabe Davis really isn't the guy, I don't know where else these 191 targets are going to get distributed to. It's certainly not the garbage cans, Isaiah McKenzie and Jamison Crowder. But I don't know. I don't know what the situation is going to look like for the Bills. It's not a bad pick, especially in the late rounds. Like, if you need a late round tight end, I like it. But like I said, my barometer for determining tight ends, I want them at least a top 3
Targets.
option in the target.
He could be this year, though.
Chart. I think you have Stefan Diggs.
Yeah.
You have is it Gabe Davis?
Yes.
Okay, and then Dawson Knox will definitely fall into that probably the 2 or 3 conversation.
Now, the argument that I've heard too, and you might hop on this train, is James Cook will take a lot of targets.
Oh, get the hell out of here with James Cook. I just
okay, so you don't. All right.
No, I was in on James Cook. I was.
What happened?
Somebody drafted him freaking number 2 in a rookie draft, and I lost my mind.
Yeah, the league that I'm in with you, and I texted you right after it happened saying, what the heck is this?
Indefensible.
Yeah, that was something else.
So anyway, I've liked James Cook, but
he's gonna have a role though. They drafted him to be.
Let's relax,
because they tried to sign J.D. McKissick. Remember, that was
if we take a look.
He went back to Washington.
If we take a look in the years past of Josh Allen, what do you find?
Yeah.
What do you find?
He likes to throw it down the field.
Yeah, he doesn't throw it. So this is the same concern with Najee Harris and his dump off throws for me.
Yeah,
he's not going to have the same target share. I don't think all of a sudden, because they drafted James Cook, Josh Allen's going to be like, you know what? I got to throw it to this guy.
Unless there's designed
plays for him, or he's getting shifted out into, to do, into the slot to do, down the field plays. But he just is not a guy that his dump off is running it for 17 yards. That's Josh Allen's dump off. 3rd and 5. I'm not dumping it off to the running back like Mac Jones. I'm going to run it for 15 yards and get a first down and shove it right down your throat. That's how Josh Allen plays. That's the type of quarterback that he is. So, James Cook, no thanks.
I agree with you on that. I do think he's going to have...
He got me on the target share. I definitely think there's going to be an increase, but my only concern here really is the total touchdown rate.
Sure.
I hit 18.4%.
Yeah, 9 touchdowns.
Of his catches were touchdowns.
Feels like a lot.
9 out of his 49 catches.
Yeah,
were touchdowns.
I know. That's not happening again.
That's like, if he gets the same amount of target share, nothing changes.
Yeah, then I don't.
Oh my God, it's a complete and utter collapse.
I'm doing it based on that he's gonna get 20,
right, which is all of this is speculation. So I actually, you convinced me. I like Dawson Knox.
There we go. All right, your turn.
I'm not convincing anyone of this. I threw him on the list just for fun. Pat Freiermuth. He honestly, frick you, Kyle Pitts. If Kyle Pitts was not drafted or didn't exist, Pat Freiermuth would have had the best tight end season ever as a rookie.
Yeah, true.
So
good year.
This was a really good season for Muth. Now the question is, was this a really good season for Muth because Ben's? Ooh, I'm just making a crap ton of noise over here. I have a trash can in my office where I record this podcast, filled with bubbly cans. I'm not even joking. I wish I could show you. It's horrendous. But so it could have been Big Ben's noodle arm not having or the shoulder that he no longer has. His inability to throw down the field, and it could have been just the fact that Freiermuth happened to be the guy in the seam for the easy throw that opened up. You saw the same thing with Deontay. So, that could have been the reason why he had a good rookie season. But I'm balancing. This is like a balance. I'm standing on a balance beam going both sides with the Steelers because part of me is like, do we think Big Ben was the reason why they were winning and their offense was okay?
Not really.
Because you can't in the same breath say, well, Big Ben sucks, and then also say Mitch Trubisky's going to make the Steelers worse.
Yeah.
Because I honestly think they're the same quarterback at this point. Except Mitch can throw farther.
Yeah.
So, to me, I feel like there's going to be opportunity for Pat Freiermuth. It doesn't fall into my my synopsis of having a guy with at least a top 3 target in the where he is at least a top 3 target in the offense. Freiermuth, I think, is, I would say, 3, if that, maybe 4. I don't think Pickens is going to be. I think he's going to be involved at some point. Might be later this season, but I don't. He might just take over Chase Claypool and throw him to the bird. But I'm not concerned about George Pickens yet, just because you blow up in a preseason game. That's great. We'll see what happens there. But I think it's Deontay, and let me know if you agree with this. Deontay, Chase Claypool, Najee Harris, and then Freiermuth.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, the only thing that Pickens would have to overtake Claypool, but I don't think that's gonna. I like Pickens, I do, but I do think he's getting overhyped. So yeah, it would be something along those lines.
So for Freiermuth too, I think I don't know if the target share is going to be huge. I feel like if Kenny Pickett comes in and plays quarterback at some point this year, that's going to be good things for Freiermuth. It depends on how they draw up plays, and I don't even remember if Mitch Trubisky targeted the tight end position when he played quarterback for the Bears.
I think he did. Remember. I do think he did, because that was Jimmy Graham's time.
But if the offense is the same for the Steelers, right? This is where I'm on the balance beam. If the offense is the same for the Steelers and Deontay Johnson is a good route runner and Pat Freiermuth was a good tight end last year, then why can't those two have success with Mitch Trubisky in the offense that is the same?
It's a fair point.
I don't understand why that can't.
There may be, you can make the argument that there's more target competition than there was last year.
Yeah.
Because Juju pretty much missed the whole season, so it was really just Claypool and Deontay. And I think, as much as I don't think Pickens will be as involved as Johnson, Claypool, or even Freiermuth, he's still going to have a role as the wide receiver 3 on the team. So you can make that argument. I don't know if they're going to throw the ball as much. If Trubisky's the quarterback, he's going to run it a decent amount, more than Big Ben at least.
I was going to say too, Pat Freiermuth kind of looks like the cop from Stranger Things. Is it Jim Hopper?
A younger version of that?
Yeah, it looks like a younger version of Jim Hopper.
That's funny. He kind of does.
I looked it up. I was like, what the frick? Anyway, yeah, he only had 79 targets last year, 60 catches, 497 yards, and 7 touchdowns. I think he's a behemoth in the red zone. When they get there, I think this is the guy they go to, regardless of quarterback. Yeah. So that's obviously beneficial, but I think if you should at least be considered in the conversation for a breakout season if you have one of the best rookie tight end seasons ever.
Very fair.
And if Kenny Pickett works, he comes in and he works, or Mitch Trubisky comes in and he learns something from Josh Allen, he ends up being good, and the Steelers' offense looks decent. And by decent, I mean top 15, maybe top 20. Freiermuth can have a good year. And I think if that's the case, you want to get him on your team. I don't know what his ADP is because I really haven't been drafting him too much. It's really been
it's 14,
Comet.
Something like that.
But if you're looking for a late round tight end, you can smash that. And last year, I think he was in 18 game season. Freiermuth was tight end 13.
That's so weird for you to say 18 game season. I'm still not used to
that. 17 games, I think it is, but because it's 18 weeks with a bye.
18 week season, yeah, but still, it's a little weird.
But yeah, I'm not convincing anyone of Muth. I just really like the player. In a similar sense that people you talk about Kyle Pitts. This dude's getting drafted in the third round. Round. And, there's no receivers there, so he's going to have obviously a much higher target share. He's going to be the number 1 receiver for the Atlanta Falcons, so that's the benefit of having Kyle Pitts. but there's no quarterback. The offensive line blows.
The whole offense blows.
The whole offense is terrible. Like, they're going to be 6 times worse than the Steelers' offense, and yet everyone's buying up Pitts like he's the next best thing. And I would love to say Pitts is a breakout tight end this year.
Yeah,
I could have swore he was going to be on that list, but this year it's hard to. He's getting drafted in the 3rd round, and I'm not going to tell you to draft a tight end in the 3rd round.
Right. I'd also say that, like, I like Kyle Pitts, and I think, he got 110 targets last year. He might get like even more than that this year.
Yeah.
But the touchdowns will still be low, and like he's going 3rd round when George Kittle and Darren Waller are going 5th round, and I feel like all 3 of those guys are the same tier.
Yeah. So
like, why would you take Pitts in the 3rd when you could wait into the 5th and get Kittle or Waller if you're going to draft tight end? That's my argument against Pitts, but yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. So there you have it, Freiermuth. Did I say anything that made you feel like you wanted to pat? Do you want to go on this train?
I mean, you made better arguments than what I've heard, but I still don't really want to draft.
Oh, see, better arguments than what you've heard.
Yeah.
They must have been pretty bad arguments then.
They weren't great.
They must have been pretty bad arguments.
Yeah. I'm still worried about target competition and how good the quarterback play is.
He's kind of
how many times they're going to throw it
to Dawson Knox, though, because Dawson Knox, based on the amount that they passed last year, 16% target share. Pat Freiermuth, 13% target share, 22% red zone. Dawson Knox was 17% red zone. So both of these dudes, in the same. Actually, the target share percentage for Dawson Knox is 13%. As well. Yeah. So they both had the similar target share. The question is an increase of target share. And, does a guy like Pat Freiermuth, does a guy like Dawson Knox increase or decrease at the touchdown, with the touchdowns? And, I think that's going to determine it. But I think those 2 guys are decent options in your later rounds. Like if somebody just rips your soul out and drafts Cole Komet and you have the strategy of drafting a tight end and you need to pivot, Freiermuth or Dawson Knox, not a bad option. Rick and I have also been on the Bob Tonyan train. Clearly,
for the later rounds.
In the later rounds, I don't know why that's not a thing. Just because
I think he's because he tore his ACL in week
and people are
9 of last year, so he's iffy about playing week 1.
Oh, all right. Because I haven't been drafting Bob Tonyan either. So
yeah. But if he plays.
If he plays, that's going to be a hell of a target share.
Yeah, he's not a breakout, but he's a good late round option.
But anyway, yeah, I mean, he already had a breakout season at some point, so he doesn't deserve to be on this list.
He had like a top 5 finish 2 years ago, wasn't he?
Yeah, close. Something like that. But anyway, that was when Devontae Adams wasn't there.
He was tight end 3 in 2020.
Sheesh, dude. Yeah, so there's I think Tonyan could shock, but that might be a guy that you can wait. On just to see what happens. But anyway, there you have it. Top 3 breakout quarterbacks, top 3 breakout tight ends. I feel like this is our last super long show of the year. Hopefully. And we'll get to some more content. Like I said, later this week, we got riskiest players and a mock draft. So be sure to check those episodes out. We'll see you later, guys.
Peace out.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.